Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Machine Shop Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Van Metre, and I was just completely blown away today by this conversation with Marvin at True Precision Machining. They have such an amazing recipe and formula for the success of their shop that he just so clearly lays out for us. I mean, I have just a page of notes. I kind of figure out which timestamps to use for the ads and the intros. But I think one of the biggest things he stressed is truly understanding your pricing structure so you can price appropriately both prototype jobs and production jobs, making sure that you have customers that are, that are a good partner for your business and that are not beating you up every time, are willing to, pay the rates for those prototypes and R&D work, and also, appreciating the fact that you can sharpen your pencil for production work and might want to give those parts to you, because they went from a more of a low volume job shop into a really quite high production shop. But Marvin also talks about the importance of paying your people really well, having a good culture, making sure your performance to your customers, on-time delivery and quality, are really dialed in. Talked about how many, people in their company that they are paying six figures to, experienced team members, programmers, machine up, setup guys that can coach and mentor the younger folks coming up in the business. It just sounds like a fantastic company all around. And then at the very end just completely blows my mind with what they're doing with AI for estimating and quoting. We didn't dig into the details, but I will try to learn more about that. But anyway, enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, appreciate you being part of this experience, this community of people sharing to help lift up the machining industry. And if you want to rate or review the podcast on any platform, we would genuinely appreciate that. And let's get into this fantastic conversation with Marvin. Well, Marvin, my friend, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here.
Hello, thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so I have admired your shop for quite a long time. You guys have, from my perspective, a lot of really cool things you guys are doing right. So I thought it'd be awesome to have you on the show and share what you can with the industry. So
cool.
Let's start with a little bit of your background, and then we'll get into the shop and sort of what the snapshot of what you guys look like today.
Okay. Well, I grew up in with the background in no college education, so just high school, C.D. average. I didn't want to be a machinist. That wasn't my passion. It just so happened that I fell into it. My dad was working at a shop. He was the custodial guy, and so he got me a job. And ever since then, my passion was making money. And so as I saw positions above me that had more opportunity, I really, I'd say, work more with my hands. So I was able to learn quicker, and the money motivated me to keep moving forward.
Right. And so prior to True Precision, you worked in several shops before that, right?
That's correct. So mostly in Central California, Southern California, aerospace manufacturers. I went to Honeywell for a short period, about 2 years in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to really see a lot of different styles of manufacturing, different, more job shop versus more production. So it's really cool to see the different organizations of business.
Got it. And did you get into programming, or were you always just a machinist or mill slaves?
So I did started from deburring and cleaning the floors, got into setting up machines, got into editing programs, and then got into programming. Most of it was programming by hand back in the, 2005, back when CAD/CAM was kind of like the newer thing, or not newer, but not really so relevant. Then after that, they gave me free software to try and slowly develop that as I grew, as I got older.
Cool. And then, tell us about True Precision and where you then merged up and became a part of the team.
Sure. So after seeing, working at probably like 6 or 7 different shops and seeing the different styles of business and how they ran and personal experiences that really affected me, it kind of taught me or made me view things differently as a manager. And so I knew that I wanted to be a manager, but I didn't know what I would do or what I would be good at. So the current manager for this company, True Precision, he had health issues, so he had to retire early.
Got it.
And I was working in LA, and my boss called me and said, "Hey, that manager position's open. Do you want to come be a production manager?" And I said, "Sure." So the next day I made the trip, and with very little guidance, I was able to kind of see and improve things, and based off my experiences, help minimize a lot of the problems that we were seeing in our shop.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so tell us a little bit then the history. How old was the company when you joined it? What did it look like at the time in
Gotcha.
terms of people and machines, and where are you at today?
Yeah, so in '99 it opened up with 3 machines, and I think it had like 2 or 3 employees. I came on board in 2011, 12, and I've been there for 13 years now.
Okay.
At that time, 12, 13 years ago, we had about 20 employees, and we had about 10 CNCs. Now we're at 45 employees and 17 CNCs.
Nice. That's good
Uh,
growth. That's good
and
growth.
when I came on board, it was already established as a high quality shop. The owner was a machinist with he was a tool and die guy. He was a fixture guy. He knew
Mm.
everything about machining and fixtures and special processes. But I really feel like the business end is what was lacking. And I really feel like that's the end that most machine shops don't focus on.
Yes.
And so it's hard for them to make money and to sell this beautiful quality work if they don't know how to sell it, right?
Mhm.
And so once I started figuring out pricing and figuring out how to price things and customers' demands, and I really used it to our advantage to really be a lot more profitable. And that profit really is what helped us get the equipment and the technology and the path that we're heading down today. Because at the end of the day, if you're not getting the money that you need to keep your business open, then why are you in business?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Profit is what allows growth to happen, right? If you don't
That's
have
correct.
anything extra, you can't buy machines, you can't hire more people. Yeah. So you're spot on about that. I mean, the classic story of, a tool and die maker, a skilled machinist that decides to start a business, and they got that part of it down pat. But the other side, which is so critical, and which is really why this podcast exists, is the whole business end of it, the sales and marketing, the culture, the systems, the processes that allow that profit to happen. Because
Yeah, and even the organization and planning for the future, right? Having that vision to say, hey, well, we need a purchasing manager, we need a production manager, we need a quality manager. We're all doing the things. It's just they're not named and they're not titled, and people don't know what they're actually responsible for. They just kind of know that they're all responsible for those things, and they're not really laying it out so that they can scale if that's what they want to do.
right. So let's dig into that. So it sounds like you started to improve things both on the shop floor, but also sort of on the front end office, selling, estimating, quoting better.
That's correct. So I felt like we were missing out on a lot of money. Basically, most machine shops, what they do is they just do a setup time and a run time, and they multiply that by a dollar amount, and they send that out. And
Right.
you're really missing out on a lot of the administrative, shipping costs, invoicing, billing. And so if you're not capturing those costs, well, you have a really low dollar amount for let's just say a 5-piece new project, right? A new part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas now our pricing is higher, but to reflect the administrative work that is needed to be done to get that 5-piece done. So where the smaller shops kind of lose it is on the higher production quantity quotes. They'll bid as aggressively, but their rates for running are higher than ours because we did the ABC costing, which really maximizes or minimizes the amount that we charge, but we make it up on running 2 machines or operational efficiency, either one of those.
Got it. So you said ABC costing. You're talking about activity-based costing.
That's correct. So defining your work centers, defining your employee rates, and figuring out what's the correct cost for long-term production runs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because you said at the same time you're adding extra cost for the administrative side, those first article inspections, packaging, ship, things that takes overhead. But at the same time, you're sharpening your pencil on the machine rate for the production side, which gives you more competitive volume costs, which helps you
That's
win that
correct.
production. Helps you win that production work.
That's correct. And so there's that, and then there's the other method, which is utilizing most of your equipment for the amount of time that you have it, right? So if my machine's sitting here and I'm only running one shift, I can only utilize 40 hours a week with one person.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I now have two shifts, well, now my rent, that's, let's just say, let's say $10,000 for an equal number.
Sure.
I have to pay that $10,000 every month. Now, if I can run that machine 2 times, day and night, now I can adjust that cost to half, right? And now if I have a weekend shift, I divide it into 3. And so that's the operational efficiency that most shops are missing. And so with us, we run 3 shifts to be able to bring that really cost-effective number for the higher production.
Mm-hmm. I love that you're just saying this out so clearly. Things that I think are in the minds of people, and things that are
And
obstacles.
obviously the newest and the greatest thing would be to not have an operator in front of the machine, right? So in order to do that, you would have to have the equipment that would be able to run lights out. And so if you have a 40 pallet machine and you run a part that takes 30 minutes, well, you would probably get close to 20 hours of runtime. So your guy would just need to be there for 4 hours to kind of load and unload, check a few measurements, and then he would let it run for another 20 hours. So now you get even more operational efficiency because you're reducing the labor. That's kind of on the mill side. On the lathe side, you need to have enough material in your bar feeder for it to run throughout. And that's kind of more of a challenge because the volume really needs to be there, and your material needs to be, your rack needs to hold enough material for it to produce throughout the whole night.
Yeah. I'd love to come back to your quoting and estimating for a minute. When you started doing this more activity-based costing, especially on the higher production runs, did you see an increase in your win rate?
Definitely.
But you're still making a good margin on those jobs?
That's correct. Yes. And so our goal is to charge for that one person in front of the machine, maintaining it, right? Changing the tools, making offsets. And that would be our kind of like lowest point of cost, right? Mm-hmm. Now we can gain more operational efficiency by having that same guy run 2 machines that are right next to each other. And so you can make even more money off of what you already bid on.
Yeah. Now, if you have a job, let's say it's a 10-minute runtime, but it only takes 3 minutes of manual labor to change it out, inspect it, deburr it, whatever. Do you actually put in like a 30% labor component in your bidding process?
So our bid is at a specific rate, having one employee in front of it. So depending on if you're going to be doing, let's just say thousands of parts, then you're maximized by the amount of spindle hours that you're able to utilize, right? So you can, I think in ProShop, you can separate your hourly rate by your labor rate, by your machine rate, so that you can manage that and be more cost effective. Because you're right. If my machine runs for 10 minutes and the guy's there for 3 minutes, I don't want to charge the full amount if I really want to win the job. Sure. The only jobs that I really want to win are the 10,000 piece orders and the long-term contracts, right?
Yeah.
And that's how these shops really get into a position that they can't be touched. Because if you don't have that experience and that confidence to know that these are your numbers and you're going to actually make money or at least break even, and then now if you pair it with another job where you're doing the exact same thing and that guy's running both of those, you're going to make money off of that.
Yeah, so good. So it sounds like you're saying that through this process of activity-based estimating and costing, that you really have successfully started winning these higher production jobs.
Yes, so the history of the company was always orders under 500 pieces. Maybe 1,000 was like, oh wow, we got this really large order, 1,000. Now we're seeing 10,000, 20,000, 3-year contracts, 7-year contracts.
Wow.
All because we were able to really, I would say, pinpoint our costs effectively, right? And manage the part flow, because as we all know the part cost, because as we all know, in the past 3 years, we've had a lot of price increases, materials and labor, California being especially the worst. And it surprises me when I hear people say that we have to move out of California because we can't do business. I have a feeling that they really don't know how to manage a business. And in a way, if they would pass these costs on to their customers and you stay in business. If you have good quality, on-time delivery, and good pricing, there's no reason you should fail.
Yeah. 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 So, all right. Thank you for digging in on that. I think that was really concise and wise. I know people will be taking notes about having to sort of up their game on really understanding their estimating costs and their
And
pricing.
really, and really, what I think is affecting us is people's inability to cost things pricely, right? Cost things correctly, to the fact that if a customer says to me, well, your pricing is 20% higher than this other shop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I always tell them, so well, let's compare apples to apples. Let me see who we're bidding against, and let's see, what makes it. But these guys all play the game. So if machine shop B is purposely doing it, underbidding it, they're now hurting the whole industry, because
Right.
now they're going to try to leverage me against this guy who I don't know who it is. They're not going to supposed to tell you. And I really feel like that's really the detriment to our industry, is that we pin each other instead of working together. And that's why I'm on this show today, is because I want people to know to bid your stuff correctly so we can all make this a good and thriving industry, which it should be. There should be no reason that we can't afford to pay people the good money, that we can't buy the right technology, that we can't buy a good ERP software. If you're not bidding stuff correctly, you're just putting yourself out the door and putting us at risk of going out of business.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend recently who had they were in a part of the country without a lot of insulation in their house, and it was super cold, and a bunch of houses had their pipes freezing. And so I know that those plumbers that are going to come out and do those emergency calls, they're charging like $250, $300+ an hour to show up with a truck and some hand tools and do the plumbing work, right? And no shade on plumbers, they're totally essential.
Sure. Yeah.
But we in a machine shop with a $500,000 machine can't charge $300 an hour, because people are out there bidding $60, $80 an hour, and it's just absolutely madness. Like it's crazy.
Well, what's really causing the madness is really the buyer. So I feel like your relationship with your customer should be a mutually beneficial relationship. And I feel like a lot of machine shops kind of don't understand this. If a customer is coming to me and always taking in the sense of they don't pay for NREs, they want the cheapest price, they're always bidding me against their buyer, they're always doing rev changes on me. If they're making it a hassle for me to do business, and I'm not and they're not willing to accept my costs and are always beating me up on pricing, that's not a mutually beneficial relationship. I want the client that understands that, hey, look, you changed the rev on me in the middle of the process. I need to charge for these extra costs that are incurred. Or, hey, you know what? This LTA we have for 3 years, the pricing went up on materials and this and that. I need you to help me and get some more money for my dollars, for my people, and for the materials. And they'll say, okay, yeah, we understand that. Here it is. If you're not seeing those kind of collaborations with your client, you need to fire them. And we've done that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, yeah, we did that too at ProCNC. Do you have any kind of formal system for rating your customers? Like A, B,
Not really,
C grade,
but
or just
but that's that's a perfect thing that I would like to implement. We have it in our own system, like we just write in, and basically what we're looking for is repeat work to keep our employees busy, right? And then we'll do some R&D for them based on the amount of dollars that we get from them. So if they're giving us a lot of dollars for a lot of parts, well, we'll do more R&D work for them, because that's the hardest thing that most companies can't, that most clients are looking for, is a shop that'll do fast R&D prototype, low quantity work. Anyone could get that work. The hardest work to get is the higher volume, good paying work.
Do you charge for that R&D work, or is that like a perk? You do, okay, but you'll prioritize it for them.
We'll give them the opportunity to use our time, because that's the most expensive thing in our facility is the programmer, the lead setup guy, and more than likely on a 5-axis or a 9-axis machine, which is what we have here. So those are costs that are just a standard rate. But as we all know, when we get a job, the likelihood of it going as planned, or it's very chaotic. It's very hit or miss. So we don't try to be very profitable on that. We try to profit on the repeat work that's more consistent.
Got it. Got it. Do you run that work on the same machines, or do you have machines kind of set aside for that R&D quick turn work?
So we have two different paths. Obviously, the best and cheapest path is a manual machine if we can do it manually.
Okay.
If the customer tells us, and so then again, you get back into the RFQ stage. Well, what is this project? Is this a project that's going to go into production? So if that is the case, then we will mandatory make it CNC to provide a proven process so that the customer, so we know that, hey, look, these are going to be our cycle times after we run it. Now we have some history of what it'll be, right? A lot of shops make the mistake of doing it prototype. Now the guy does it by hand, and they don't really have an accurate cycle time, so that when they go to bid the 2,000 piece order,
right,
they have they're just going off of what they think it would cost, right?
Sure.
Versus if you had a guy run the machine and you say, hey, optimize it as much as you can, now you can really figure out what the true cost of that part would be at your, at the best of what you ran it at.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, when you're planning on what part, where you're going to run it, or what you're going to do, it depends on really what the customer's endpoint's going to be.
Sure.
If they're just looking for 5 pieces for a fixture or some tooling, probably not.
Yeah.
A lot of our equipment is modular in the fact that we have an 8 pallet, 5-axis machine. So I could utilize 2 of those pallets for R&D work. I have 240 tool station. So we could put, 60, 90 of just the prototype part tools, and enough software memory for us to run multiple programs, multiple parts.
Got it. So I'm curious to dig in a little bit on that, because at our shop, we did have a separate prototype department. So maybe that's the difference. So you're running things on spare pallets with your same production programmers.
That's correct.
We had completely separate sort of journeyman level prototype machinists that were extraordinarily fast and good at what they did, but they were definitely using methods for fixturing and programming that you would not want to translate into production.
Exactly.
But you're right. If we knew that it was going to almost guaranteed be a job that we were going to have the chance to win higher production on, then very likely we would use those production programmers with their methodology right away.
And so one of the things that we do is that we utilize our day shift as our R&D and setups, and then night shift and weekend shift is production. So we can easily just switch a program. It'll already know what pallets to pull up, and the guys just come in right when their shift starts, and they just start production all night. Then in the morning, machine's hopefully still running. There's about 4 hours of overlap where we're not, no one's here.
Yep.
And then once that machine's done or that part's done in the morning, the guy comes in and continues back on his R&D project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we did that. We did that as well at our shop. When you joined 13 years ago or so, did you have those pallet machines, or are those things you added in later?
So we had one, but it wasn't really fully utilized to be lights out, in the sense that it was only 3 pallets. So it's like, how much utilization could you really get? And if you're not bidding cost effectively, and if you're just using a round number and saying, oh, well, I charge $100 an hour, you're not going to win those orders, especially for the thousands of parts. So there was multiple things that were causing us to not get the type of work, and the capacity or the capability of the equipment wasn't helpful as well. But I think the thing that created the opportunity was charging correctly for the what we call spot buys, R&D, prototype, small quantity parts. Bidding those correctly allowed us to build a good financial stability in order for us to apply for newer equipment that would be able to run more lights out and more newer technologies and stuff like that. That's what really catapulted us out of the normal machine shop role.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting, because you're right. I feel like most shops out there that are really job shops that focus on that low volume, high mix work, they want some of those, I'll call it gravy, longer term running production jobs, but they can't figure out a way to do that, or the customers they serve don't have volumes like that. Did you find yourself going and seeking out customers that you knew had higher volumes as you kind of transitioned your shop to a more high volume shop?
Well, what we realized was that our on-time delivery and our pricing was really affecting us from some of the clients that we already knew were giving out work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they saw us by the previous year's history of business and said, look, these guys are never on time. Their pricing is really high on production work.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't bid them on this stuff? Just bid them on fixturing and tooling. So they've put you in this little spot. And it's up to you to convince them that, hey, no, look, you're really capable. You really understand your business and you really know what direction you want it to go. You just want them, since you've been there for them for 5, 10 years, whatever, now go ahead and help you build your business. If they're not, then you go back to what I was talking about, your relationship. If they're not trying to help you, why are you helping them?
Right. So what are some of the ways that you would get yourself out of that box of that tooling and R&D work into production RFQs?
I think that sometimes you have to take a risk. I mean, first thing, you should always know your costs, right? You should know what your employees make and put those in an hourly compartment. So you know monthly what your spend is. You should know what your rent. You should know what your material costs are, so that you have a pretty accurate assessment of what your cost is going to be when you run a production order. And then really taking a risk to maybe be a little bit aggressive on the pricing so that you do win that order and they do take a chance on you, right? Because there's always a chance that if you're close enough, you can always come up a little bit to kind of keep them happy the next year, the next time you get the order. But that's the first thing I would do, is make sure your pricing is good and are aggressive just at the beginning to give them the chance, give you the opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then it's really up to you to perform. If you're not delivering on time or have poor quality, then you might as well just not even start. And I will say that R&D, short run, new parts, the high frequency of that will cause you to have a higher likelihood of poor quality and poor on-time delivery. So you're kind of setting up yourself up for failure by already establishing that. But if you don't have a scheduling system and really figure out your cycle times to make sure your guys are able to run those machines with that time, you're really going to fail, because you're not going to know if you're going to fall behind until your due date comes and you say, oh, well, parts are going out for anodize and masking and we need 4 weeks and the parts are due in 2 weeks, right? A customer wants to know 2 to 4 weeks ahead of time. Hey, look, we ran into some issues, parts running behind the schedule. I'll need a couple. Then they could plan for their internal team to either schedule them out or do another project while they're waiting for your parts to come in.
Got it. Yeah. So I'm reading between the lines in this that in years past your on-time delivery was not quite as good, and you really
That's
focused on it,
100% correct.
and now it's a lot better, which is allowing you to bid and win this work.
We would bid a job, 6 to 8 weeks, and it would be 12 weeks out, and we wouldn't even say anything. The 8-week mark, the due date would come by on the PO. We would just keep plugging away and just say, "Oh, I hope they never call. I hope they don't, hope they don't email us." And then, the day would come after the 10th week. They say, "Hey, my production team's waiting for these parts. What happened?" And we'd say, "Oh yeah, we ran into some issues." And they'd say, "Well, why didn't you tell us earlier?" And we're like, "Oh, we were just busy," and and so it was a learning experience.
Yeah. And so what did you do to get better? Did you just commit to better communication, or actually putting things in place to actually deliver on time so you don't need to ask them for more time?
And so that's kind of where I saw the advantage of ProShop, and that's how we got out of E2. I really saw the limitation of how hard it was to schedule work on that and how to schedule outside processing. I think that that's really powerful that ProShop offers that, and it really offers a clear line of communication to our whole team of what's expected to leave and when, and what the timeline of things are to be. If you don't have that kind of visibility in your organization, especially as a bigger shop, then it's going to be really hard to manage. And a lot of shops, with the 5 to 10 employees, they know that their people know how to manage parts going through and when they need to go because of history, because of they've done this for so long.
Right.
But when you're trying to build a team, especially people that are not in this industry or don't know, and you want to make it scaled, it's a lot easier if you have an ERP that can manage that and have the communication through the organization.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. I want to ask you about adding the second and then third shift. Sometimes adding shifts are hard because you don't have office staff to support them. And, sometimes you come in and they made negative progress because they scrapped so many parts.
Yep.
Tell us about how you successfully added 2
Sure.
additional shifts.
So the night shift was the easiest one to implement, and that was because more people were interested in working night shift than weekend shift. Um, and I think really you have to know what your experiences of your operators to be able to bring that work on, to let them run and to let it keep going. So if I had a bunch of hard titanium jobs with plus or minus 2/10, and you need to adjust the boring head, or you need to always watch your Z lengths, we probably wouldn't set them up, right? If it's a new operator and they don't have that much experience.
Sure.
You have to start out with the very basic, the aluminum, very loose tolerance, and take an order that you normally wouldn't take to kind of keep that guy busy at night.
Mm-hmm.
Leave that work for him. Don't let the day shift guy run it. That's your most experienced, run a loose tolerance job. You have to take work that will be for your capability of your people and your equipment, right? And even if it means it costs you a little bit up front, or you have to use that experience to get your team to be developed, so that they can utilize and experience what it is to do this kind of work. And then you slowly start feeding in the rest of the work and doing things like that. We do in-process checks daily. So we have an inspector who goes around every morning and we segregate all the parts. The parts are segregated by shift, by operator. And so every day we do a full inspection of day shift and night shift parts, just like a AQL sample, so that we can verify that they're making good parts and we're not running for 7 days with all bad parts. And so
is that on top of the machinist doing their own in-process inspection?
That's correct. So you need to have a third-party inspection because everyone thinks they're making the right part, and then the guy didn't calibrate the tool correctly. It fell on the ground. You name it. Read the numbers wrong. You've seen it, and so you need to have that third-party inspection daily to maintain and monitor how they're doing. And then obviously you can increase inspection frequency based on the employee. If he's a new guy with no machining experience, if it's a tight tolerance job, if it's a critical customer, and then you can increase that.
Got it. So what you said was, and I've not heard someone say this, but it's really interesting. And it sounds like to find the right work for that night shift, you're thinking about this far enough in advance that you're like quoting, you're like, let's go find some easy jobs that we can then use on night shift, build up the experience level of that team, even if it's a slightly lower hourly rate or margin.
That's correct.
Interesting. Okay.
If it's paying the machine and paying the person, it's good enough.
Right. That's a longer term strategic way to think about it. So then you did the same thing on weekend shift.
That's correct. Yeah. Okay. So weekend shift came out of us finding more capacity. So we'd have part-time employees come in from other shops. Oh. And they would say, hey, do you have any work on Friday? Because we work 4/10s. We work Monday through Thursday from 6 to 4:30.
Yep.
So we had Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays available. And one of the guys was like, hey, you know what? I kind of want to go part-time. I'm getting ready to retire. And I said, cool. Hey, would you be interested in working Fridays and Saturdays for us? And he's like, yeah. So he was working Fridays and Saturdays. And then next thing you know, we're like, hey, we need someone to run this machine. I said, let's put an ad out. Let's see if we can find someone that wants to work weekends. Maybe they want to work too. Sure enough, a guy wanted to work his regular Monday to Thursday job, and he wanted an extra job to work 2 or 3 days a week. And we said, cool, whatever you have, just come work for us and we'll have work for you. And then that's how it started. And the next thing you know, we have 4 employees now on weekend shift that are happy just working 3 days a week. 12 hours a day, 36 hours, and they get paid 40 hours.
Yep. That's how we did it too. For some folks in their lifestyle, that 4 days off every week is really, really nice.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's cheaper on the weekday. If you go to Six Flags, if you go to, it's like you get the cheaper prices, right? So like you're making more money, right? Because we pay people a premium for the weekends. We're not, so we're paying people top dollar and they were 3 days a week, and then they get the discounts of if they want to do something or go on a vacation or fly somewhere. It's like the flights are cheaper. You don't have to deal with all the traffic. The only thing is that you'll miss out on like family events, like a cousin's wedding or,
Right.
But then we tell them, hey, look, if you really want the day off, put the request. We'll give you the day off. It's not a big deal, so.
Yeah. Tell me about the culture at the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the biggest thing that I feel really sets us apart. I've worked, like I said, in like 6 or 7 machine shops, and probably Honeywell was probably the most relaxed environment that I worked in, where
Okay.
no one was really watching you. You just kind of did your thing. You hit your targets, and no one even cared. But you kind of felt left alone, like lonely, like well, is anyone watching what I did? I just saved the cycle time on this, right?
Right.
And they're just like, okay, well, don't be doing that unless you talk to your supervisor. And the supervisor didn't really even know much about machining. He was just a college degree what does he call him?
Spreadsheet jockey.
Spreadsheet jockey. Yeah. And so I kind of saw and then I had the other side of the spectrum where it was just like, hey, you were off on your cycle time by, 15 seconds. What happened? Like, why, and it's just like, hey man, the tool they ordered was the wrong tool. I had to slow down. I went from a carbide to high speed.
Oh, wow.
And so there was, I got to see everything. And I feel like we have a really good blend of, we leave you alone. We give you your task, accomplish your task at the set amount of time that we have allocated. We have enough communication and joking around that when we're not extremely busy, we're I would say lollygagging, playing around.
Yeah.
But when we're behind schedule, we're running up against our lead times, and we need to accomplish things. People are working overtime, coming in on days off when they don't need to, and really helping us as a company, keeping that perception that the client has of us. Because we all know, and I relay this to the organization as much as often, that we are an employee to the clients.
Mhm.
They are giving us work based on our performance and our price.
Yeah.
It's up to us to perform so they can keep giving us work. If we don't, then if we don't have work, you don't have work. And if you don't have work, you're going home. And that's how it works.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're not a Google where we can sit around and talk about stuff all day and really,
Sure.
sit in an area and relax. But at the same time, we have a good mix of, we got to stay competitive. We got to stay productive. But at the same time, if we joke around and do a couple things, very few companies, I think, do like, I don't know, a monthly barbecue or birthday celebration for all the employees. We do that monthly. We do a monthly employee recognition where we give them, the employee, certain perks for that. And then we have a management one where we pick an employee that we take out to lunch and kind of discuss to him what his plans are, what his goals are. We kind of hand select them based on their performance, their attitude, their attendance, and we ask them to be as open as possible, right? To provide feedback to us in a sense that if he tells us he doesn't like something, tell us. If he tells us that there's issues with certain things, let us know. We want this open line of communication that I feel like sometimes employees don't have to give to their bosses or managers or whatnot. And ProShop does a really good thing about that, which I like, which is the I think it's the employee scorecard, right? Where you
survey.
the satisfaction survey, yeah. So where you get to rate, what are you doing, how well you're doing, and provide feedback anonymously, because it really helps provide that open communication to your bosses and to your managers.
Mhm.
So we do that. We talk to them. We get advice from them, kind of understand them and see what their goals are and what their future is and what they want to do. And so it's a really good one-on-one communication that helps us understand our employees.
That's a really cool idea. And do you feel like that, you go out to lunch with one employee, and then they come back and they're like, yeah, the management is really interested in knowing about what I care about, and then that
Exactly.
permeates the company.
It definitely it allows them to see that we do care about their future. It lets us know what their goals are, right? If they want to buy a home, well, guess what? Maybe we can offer them part of the assistance for a down payment, right? And now that secures the future of our business of having that key employee or employee that is really interested in working for us long term and securing them in our area.
Wow, that is really cool. that is a
You know,
fantastic idea and takeaway. I'd love to just talk about metrics for a minute.
sure.
You guys are ISO and AS, and what do you track for your management metrics?
For the management, we do the on-time delivery. We do the quality, and in quality, there's kind of two different, I would say, metrics that would really interpret how well you're doing. One of them is internally, which is internal scrap, and the second one is what arrives to the customer.
Yeah.
And those, both of those, the most important, well, I think they're really both important, is the customer perception. I think because if they get what is bad, then the amount of business that most of your clients do, all they're doing is judging you based off of your delivery and your communications. They're not actually seeing what's happening behind closed doors and seeing how hard things are. So if you fail one time, they'll remember you for that one failure versus the
Totally.
96 other deliveries that you made good. Whereas internal scrap really costs your company dollars every day. So those are two big factors. The other metric would be your suppliers. If your suppliers aren't performing on time with their OSP and they're saying, hey, it's 2 weeks and now it's 4 weeks, or hey, they didn't mask this area correctly again, they forgot to mask it. If you're not managing them, they're going to cause your on time delivery to slip as well.
Yeah.
So that's the third thing. I think having pricing and that negotiation, that relationship, I think is really important. I think that's a measure that we kind of don't really measure, in a sense that it's pivotal for your business to work with someone who's really working with you, a company that's working with you and wants you to grow and wants to see you succeed and wants you to stay in business.
Sure.
So that's another important thing that we should be monitoring.
Yeah.
And then your sales quotes, how many are you winning and how many are you losing? If you're winning every single job, that's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
So,
I asked you about scorecards earlier. So we did have formal scorecards at ProCNC, and we would rate our customers on, probably 10 different categories, like willingness, like you said, willingness to pay NRE charges, how good are they organized about rev changes,
yeah,
just all sorts of variables. And we would categorize them into like A, B, and C, like our or tier one, are like our biggest, best customers that really do feel like they're a partner to us and we're a partner to them, and we're mutually, working together to both companies' success. And there's ones that they just didn't seem to take that same attitude about making sure their vendors are healthy.
Yeah.
And it's like, we just don't need those customers like that, And
Yes.
I think the thing that allows a company to be, get to the point where they're strategically selective like that is having a good sales and marketing effort and having the great quality metrics and on time that give you the ability to fire a customer because you got plenty in the wings that want to give you more work.
That's correct. That's 100%
So there's
correct.
like some chicken and egg there, right?
Yeah.
But I know that you guys have done some pretty good sales and marketing kind of strategies. Can you tell us a little bit about how you go sell?
Sure. Realistically, people that we've worked with in the past, we're kind of more word of mouth. So people that have worked with us at certain companies and now they go work for someone else, even though we may have not done work for them, or maybe we spoke to them or they were an engineer or whatnot, they still remember us from the time that they were at that other company. They go, you know what, True Precision does amazing work. And I think really, focusing on your name, right? True Precision. I mean, I know it's basic. I know it's a simple thing and people, oh, that's so basic. But a buyer doesn't know the difference between what's a machine shop and what's a this. So if you're saying you're True Precision, well, that must mean they're really good precision. They're really true precision. And so it really helps them kind of keep them in your mind of like, oh yeah, that's the company name, versus like if you pick like your name, oh, my name's Marvin Machine Shop. They're gonna say,
Sure.
I don't know,
Yeah.
So a lot of strategy behind that is beneficial in the bigger picture, bigger scales famous path, right? If you're looking at the short term and not really planning on doing any marketing or pursuing, then just know that your work is really what's going to have to sell itself, and it's going to take a longer time for you to get down that path. Whereas if you have a better marketing sales, when they go out and they show your business card and they show your information, it's like, wow, you guys look like a top tier aerospace machine shop. And we've been told in the past that we're a premier manufacturers from what from outside third-party source inspectors who go around to multiple facilities for Raytheon and whatnot. And so it's a really big compliment to us. And I feel that, it doesn't take much sales and marketing for you to get a lot of business. It once you land the right customer, one or two customers, it should really make your business take off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm looking at your website over here, trueprecisionmachining.com. And it's dialed in, like good branding, clean, organized, clearly. So you could clearly put a lot of effort into that, and it probably shows really well. And yeah, you go out and do that, do that marketing, do those sales calls, keep on following up with people that have moved companies. I know at our shop, we onboarded so many customers when an engineer or a buyer would move companies. And
the other thing that we're starting to see is that there's now newer, younger buyers out there, right? It's not the old guy that knew so-and-so, and this is the shop that I always did business. These guys are younger buyers who are scrolling Instagram, scrolling Facebook, and if they see your ad on there, right, and it says True Precision Machining, top aerospace machine shop, they're going to say, oh, shoot, we should try them. And then they go to their boss and say, hey, look what I found. And then they say, okay, let's try them. And so having a social, what is it called? Being on social websites, I think, are a good thing. Displaying even fun things in your shop is a good thing for attracting new talent or new clients. And then we created a YouTube video. We paid someone to, show them what it's like to do business here and how we do business here. And I think if you Google YouTube, True Precision Machining comes up, and it kind of gives you not detailed, but just a slight overview of how the part process goes through and what we do here.
Cool. I will definitely check that out and make sure the link for that is in the show notes. So you guys do have Instagram and Facebook, and you do actually ads, like paid ads?
So we're starting to do those separately. We used to do them on our individual accounts, but we realized that we should be branding the company and not the people branding the company, if that makes sense. So we just started the Facebook page for True Precision Machining. We're currently starting to add content to be able to, show a little bit of the good and bad, just bring people more visibility of what we do here. Now, obviously, we understand ITAR requirements requires us not to show any technical data. So we're not really getting down to that level, but just general shop stuff,
That's cool. And has it been a pipeline for employees as well?
And that's where we see the biggest impact is really employees, because if you look at it, most people are connected through the internet, through social websites versus through looking through actual job sites, right? Unless you're looking for a job, then you'll go to a job website and say, hey, is anyone hiring? But if you're not looking, but then you see something that really piques your interest, of a shop that has a 9-axis machine with twin turrets and something that your shop, you might say, wow, that'd be pretty cool to work there. And then, obviously your pay needs to be, competitive or better, right? And for us, we always like to pay for top talent. So it's not uncommon for us to hire 6-figure guys. A lot of our guys make 6 figures that are experienced and skilled.
Wow.
And some make more than that.
Yeah.
But, that's the demand that our customers are willing to pay for the amount of experience that, we're willing to offer. And our parts aren't easy. It's not like we're machining aluminum and brass and we have plus or minus 2 thou.
Right. Got it. I imagine, is it the case that both programmers and machinists, their most experienced ones, can make 6 figures there?
Oh, yeah, easily. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. But at the same time, because going back to our earlier conversation, you're talking about, sharpening your pencil on production work with a slightly lower hourly rate. But you figured out a formula to be able to pay your guys super well, be competitive on production work, and still clearly make enough margin in the company to buy nice equipment and do all the things you do.
Exactly. And so what I was going to mention was that we can't all be 6-figure guys here, right? Our key employees, 3 or 4 of them make those 6 figures. The rest of the employees are kind of on their path to growth to get to that, right? And so as they learn how to operate machines, operate harder, tight tolerance parts, learn how to offset correctly and learn how to program, they're slowly on that growth path as well. And so now we have this full circle of employment where the young guy can be here for 10, 20 years, can make 6 figures. And that guy that's been here already making 6 figures is probably getting ready for retirement. So he's going to be going out the door. Yeah. And so it's always good to have that kind continuity, right, in your business. I feel like a lot of people miss that. They keep all the older guys. The young guys are there doing, whatever, but they don't really train because the older guys don't want to show the younger guys. And then the older guys retire or get injured or whatever. And then now you're left with the void of, well, scrambling to hire someone. And it puts you in a really bad position.
Wow. Yeah, that's another example of clearly you guys are just thinking long term, very strategically about your long term employment strategy, and growing people.
If you were to look at our organization, there's the amount of higher paid people is smaller compared to the amount of people that are here kind of starting their career path, right? For us, it's like if you're getting out of high school, you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, you don't want to go to college, kind of like the perfect opportunity, right? Because that's kind of the path that I took. And so those are the people we kind of look for to kind of see if they're willing to learn and grow and be in this industry. And then you got the people that did try something and didn't like it. And now they're here and now they said, well, I really need to make money because I'm already in my mid 20s and I have a kid coming or something. So then they're even more eager to learn and to establish themselves. So I think being aware of your organization and a plan for all your employees is very beneficial. And the cost of having a few good employees will help run your business smoother, especially for your plant manufacturing planning, machine setups. We still train our guys. We still have the old guys tell the new guys, hey, put all these tools in and measure them, and then he'll go double check them after to make sure that they're in correctly and tight. Obviously, notify them of any errors. And then after they learn that step, they'll go to the next step where they'll actually load it in the machine and touch off all the tools. And then the experienced operator would come in and he would run the machine and see if it goes correctly. So
yeah,
you grow them in stages. And if you're not doing that, you're going to be hurting for employees later.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So as we look to kind of wrap up here, I mean, you've shared so many really tactical things that you guys do there at True Precision. If you could just summarize, what you think the best strategic moves are that you would recommend that other shops focus on to make sure they ensure their success, how would you kind of bundle it up?
Yeah, I would definitely say charging correctly for your parts. Anything that's low quantity, non-repetitive work, what they call spot buys. Those are where a lot of machine shops are missing out on dollars to be able to build their business to be a more production-friendly business, or at least to implement new technology that'll help streamline you be more effective on prototype runs, right? And really, in that aspect, it's going to get you more money. You can pay your employees more. You could take the time off. You don't have to take every single job. It just becomes such a weight lifted off your shoulders, where I feel like most machine shops underbid. They're upset because they're barely making money. They can't take time off because they're barely making money. They need to make sure the guy meets his quota of time of exactly 2.5 hours. I think that to me is the most beneficial information for all machine shops in the area that are under maybe 10 employees or 20 employees. Usually the ones that really make these mistakes are in the 5 employees, 10 employees. Usually by 20, they kind of got it figured out.
Yeah, that's so fundamental, so fundamentally important. You're right. So do you feel like that manufacturing, precision machining in North America has a good trajectory ahead of us for many years to come?
I think that it's never going to go away. I think if anything, it's going to be harder to find niche shops that are offering precision, high quality, on-time delivery. And I think that the technology is going to keep growing to help minimize the amount of, I would say, error or the use of the technology, right? So that way a guy just either AI will tell you, hey, you're going to cut this thin wall with a large tool, you're going to be chattering, or you're going to break it till it's going to turn red. It's going to tell you, don't even attempt this, right? Whereas back in the day, you didn't have that software. And so as the software keeps growing for enterprises in different fashion, it'll affect us as well, in the sense that it'll help improve our processes here internally. And right now, we're currently using AI to bring in emails from the customer. The RFQ automatically goes into a folder. The folder then gets printed out all electronically. I get the printout. I quit and quote the job, send it to the customer, or I put it back in the file, The AI picks it up and tells it and emails it back to the customer that sent it to me. It then puts a calendar date 5 days away to verify that, hey, how was our quote? Was it price too high? Was the lead time too long? Why didn't we win the job? Then when the PO comes back, it'll match the PO with the RFQ to make sure the revision number matches the part number. So it's streamlining a lot of the administrative processes that would be typical for like a Fortune 500 company. And we're seeing that already in a small business like this. So imagine what's going to happen in the next 5 years when they really get more involved in the manufacturing industry. So,
wow, you just blew my mind. That's incredible.
So, I think what would be going out would be more of the loose tolerance stuff that doesn't need to be ITAR or compliant, because those are more industries that are more like car parts, industrial,
sure, easier,
gas and oil. They just need it to work. If it does work, great. If not, they got 200 on the shelf and they'll just pull another one. And so it's going to be more specialized, more. And then I don't think R&D will ever go away. That'll probably be the most profitable and the easiest work to get. But the production work, that's where we'll kind of, see a little bit of a challenge. And unless we get more automated machines and more, I mean, my perfect case scenario and still my dream is to have, a 20 by 20 room with like 6 spindles and 500 CNC tools all loaded in this big room, and it just automatically changes all the tools and parts, kind of like a cell, right? But all enclosed in a cutting environment so that it's producing all the parts. And I just upload the CAD file. It sees all the holes. It asks me, hey, do you want to machine it like this with the dovetail? You know what I mean? So At the very end, you get a finished part, and I could do a combination of 300 parts, right? All with 1/4 inch 20 holes and 90-degree chamfers and all aluminum, right? So that's kind of my dream, but it's an expensive one.
Yeah, it's a cool vision, though. It's a cool vision, and I know it's going to be reality.
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Marvin, this has been so enlightening. So if people do want to learn more about True Precision, as I said, trueprecisionmachining.com. Any other places you'd suggest they reach out to connect?
That's our main, for right now.
Okay.
We will be doing a Facebook. We will be, growing and putting more media on there. Right now, we're just kind of testing the waters and getting ourselves familiar.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for this time. You've shared so much incredible wisdom that I know that people will be really taking down notes and trying to implement in their companies.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I really hope so.
What you guys have is clearly a good formula for success. And thank you for sharing it with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having us.
All right. Cheers.